When you consider retirement, what age do you consider? Most clients, I sit somewhere between the ages of 62 and 67. And after years of doing so, I'm convinced that number disappeared nearly a decade ago. A few years ago, a client proved this to me without question. So if you are in your 50s now, the next 15 minutes could reshape your view of the rest of your life. The couple I want to walk with you is a teacher and a long-distance truck driver whose husband has driven for nearly 30 years. His back, his knees, his sleep cycle were unraveling. If I was 65, I wouldn't be 70, he told me pointedly. It is not a play, but a man reading his body with painful honesty. His wife, the teacher, is facing two walls, looking for a way out. The first wall lives in her mind, and the question is whether they really have to be linked to the official retirement age in their 60s. The second wall is specific because almost every dollar they have is locked in a pre-tax account until they are 59 and a half. In the next video, I want to show you two things. First, why the cost of waiting to retire is so much higher than almost everyone realizes, and why the couple's instincts end up being supported by hard science they've never heard of. Second, his wife's precise strategy, which I think is one of the most elegant personal finance programs I've ever seen a non-professional person successfully implement, includes how to get pre-tax funds by age 59 and a half without handing over 10% to the IRS. Let's start with why their instincts are right. In 2024, Stanford researchers published a study tracking more than 135,000 molecules and microbes in people ages 25 to 75, with the goal of mapping the actual aging process. Most people, including me, believe that aging follows a slow downward drift, with less energy per year and more recovery time, predictable and linear. The data tell a different story. 81% of the molecules they measured did not drift at all. They collapsed in two frenzies, in their 40s and in their early 60s. For anyone planning a traditional retirement, the second wave is indeed worrisome. In your early 60s, the most dramatically altered molecules dominate your immune system, cardiovascular function, kidneys, muscles, and skin. Translated into plain language, your ability to fight the epidemic, your heart, and your fitness all fell off a cliff at the same time, not lightly. This is the edge of a cliff. Now, standard retirement plans are biology-based. People between the target ages of 62 and 67 are crossing the threshold of retirement rights, the biggest biological collapse since their 40s. And their arrival has declined after 40 years of saving for the chapter. That is why the truck driver is right without knowing he is right. Because his body has been whispering, and Stanford data is quietly confirming that. There is a price to waiting, and every year he delays. He takes a year from the best of the rest of his life, not some abstract future in a decade. Here is my honest explanation when clients tell me they want to grind to 65. Because bigger cushions make them feel safer. There is nothing wrong with math, but they often miss out on what they're really doing. Trading past healthy years for a margin of safety they may never need. The real question has never been whether spreadsheets balance 60 to 65. The real question is what the extra work brings you, and whether the price is worth it. For the couple, The answer is uncontroversial. It is not worth it, which leaves us with a harder question: how to really do it. That is their finances. Their savings total about $1.8 million, every dollar before tax, the largest of which is a $1.5 million personal retirement account in the name of their wife. Ostensibly rich, they feel shut out because touching those accounts before age 59.5 triggers a 10% early withdrawal penalty. She was 58, he was 56, and they needed cash flow almost immediately. When they sat across from me, the first thing she said was, "I think we're rich, and I just don't understand how we do it." Here is how she constructed it. The starting point is what I call the gap. If the husband stops driving tomorrow, their income 1T drop to zero because he receives a small pension from union work, about $28,000 a year. She plans to continue working as a part-time tutor and earn another $42,000 a year. That means $70,000 in total revenue will flow into their accounts, whether he shifts again or not. Their actual lifestyle requires a total income of about $110,000, leaving a gap of $40,000. The only problem she needs to solve. That is where she gets creative. Somewhere along the way, she stumbled upon a section of the tax code called SEPP 72. That allows withdrawals from pre-tax accounts before age 59.5 without paying a 10% penalty, as long as you adhere to a strict withdrawal schedule within a prescribed period of time and use one of 3 methods approved by the IRS to calculate the exact amount. Most people in her position gave up long before she found out, but she kept digging. What she did next was what I really appreciated. Instead of asking how much she could withdraw, she flipped the question, asking how much money the Republic of Ireland needed to make 72 produce only $40,000, rather than an additional dollar, because every additional dollar withdrawn now is taxed at $1, which is not available from compound interest. Her method was surgery. She used the RMD method, which relies on life expectancy factors you can look up in the IRS tables, compared with about 28.9 years for 58-year-olds. The formula itself is simple, with annual withdrawals equal to the IRA balance divided by the life expectancy factor. In turn, the required IRA balance is equal to the required withdrawal multiplied by this factor. $4 times 28.9 to produce about 115,600 ERA, which means she needs about 1.16 million ERA to meet 72 needs, creating the exact gap. Her IRA holds 1.5 million shares, which is where she sent the whole strategy soaring. She split the IRA in 2, injecting $1.16 million into one barrel of the 72 engine, and about $340,000 into the other, remaining unchanged throughout the transition and quietly compounding. Her husband's account and everything else were frozen, and only the cut part did any work. At that moment, when she saw the crack in the paper, the whole thing changed from "we can't" to "we can," and her husband was finally able to get out of the cab of the truck until it crashed him. All of this can be traced to her willingness to enter a niche market, a somewhat intimidating tax corner that most people don't bother to open. There are a few things to watch out for before you run with this, because 72 is unforgivable. Once you start, you will be held for another 5 years, or until you turn 59 and a half, whichever is later. Charging too much, too little, or stopping early in any year will result in the IRS imposing a 10% penalty on each bond you collect under the program, plus interest. It was not an arbitrary decision. This is a contract with the IRS, which will not renegotiate it. She chose the RMD method in particular because it produced the minimum amount of retracement needed for the 3 approved methods. Annual spending cuts mean more left-wing compound interest within the IRS during the transition year, and she has not tried to maximize her income at all. Her goal is to make the divestment just right for her gap and keep the rest of the portfolio growing. She started earning 72 at age 58 and earned almost exactly $40,000 in her first year. He retired, and they moved on. Punishment usually disappears when she is 59 and a half, but here the minimum 5-year limit is binding, meaning she must hold on until she is 63. At that time, it is planned to merge the 2 IRA and resume normal flexible withdrawal. Both husband and wife are more than 59 and a half years old and have not touched the compound interest of the account for 5 years. When I first made the whole plan for them, I could only say I didn't believe it because they spent months convinced they were trapped. 2 standard barriers have been swallowed up: the age barrier and the entry barrier. A conversation changed them from "we can't" to "we can't." That is what I want you to accept. The couple had no money problems. They have $1.8 million, pensions and continuing education income, and math awaits them. They face a question of faith, an age belief that they must wait for society to accept, a belief that a 10% fine is an unbreakable wall. Once those 2 beliefs collapsed, the whole situation was rearranged. The husband fled an exhausting job, and the wife no longer bore the burden of being the only economic wall in the family. They didn't even fully retire because she had been tutoring out of a love of work. But they made a very important decision: get him out before his body makes a decision on his behalf. So back to my previous question, what exactly did these extra years of work bring you? In their case, the Stanford study told them what a person in his 60s would look like biologically, while his back, knees and sleep told them what a person in his 60s would actually look like. A 10% penalty is never the real cost, because the real cost should be the year it is handed over while waiting for permission to use its own funds. If you are in your 50s, sitting on most of your pre-tax savings, and telling yourself you have to wait until you are 59 and a half, the calculation may be earlier than you think. 72 is a tool, and there are other tools. None of these strategies are arbitrary and require real planning, but they do exist. And the only reason most eligible people don't use them is that they've never been told there is a door on the wall. If that changes your view of retirement time, my video is worth seeing why $1.5 million may be the real sweet spot for most people to retire. Once you stop chasing more and start aiming enough, the whole conversation changes. Thank you for your time and attention. See you next time.